Hello Internet, so nice to see you! Retrograde is a trick where you take a piece of music, whether a melody or a chord progression or the whole thing, and you play it from the end to the beginning. You can do this with just a single section or even the whole song. Retrograde tends to work fantastically well when it works. So for instance, take a chord progression like C, F, A minor, G, C. And if you play the retrograde, that would be C, G, A minor, F, C. And both the chord progressions sound excellent, there is no problem. And so you can totally take a chord progression of a song, take the retrograde and create a new interesting chord progression from that. Try that. It works. When it works great. But when it does not work spectacularly. So for instance, in a previous video where I explained a Baroque chord progression, somebody tried to play the retrograde and it sounded horrible. The Baroque chord progression, it's this one. It is C, F major 7 with a bass of A, B diminished, E minor 7 with a bass of G, A minor, D minor 7 with a bass of F, G and C. If you play the retrograde, it just sounds wrong, okay? It doesn't flow at all, okay? And so what do we do in this case? Can we still make something interesting from there? Well, then we have to go and see how people in the Baroque era were thinking about those chord progression. For them, those were not chord progression because chords were simply not invented yet, okay? For them, those were bass lines to which you put harmony on top, okay? To which you put other stuff on top. But they were thinking mostly in terms of the bass line, okay? And what you've heard, the original chord progression I've explained, which is this again, they were seeing this as a chord progression when the bass goes down a third, up a second, so the bass is C, starts from C, goes down a third to A, up a second to B, down a third to G, up a second to A, down a third to F, up a second to G, and then from there I'm just going back to C because I want to finish the chord progression, okay? So down a third, up a second. But what happens if we do the opposite? What if rather than going down a third and up a second, the bass of the progression was going up a third and down a second? Now, the more pickier among you will go like Tommaso, that's not the retrograde, that's the inverse, that's the inversion. But honestly, in this case, inversion and retrograde are exactly the same. So this is also the retrograde of the chord progression. If you take it from the beginning to the end, the bass is still going up a third, down a second. So it's the same thing in this case. That's the interesting thing, though. When you go and see the Baroque manuals of music on what they do in this case, they play a completely different chord progression that sounds much, much, much better than the lame straight retrograde I played before, okay? So what do? We have to go first with a simple version and then with a more complex version. The simple version is this. Let's put everything in C major and let's start from the C note. If from C I go up a third, down a second, I have this sequence of notes. C, E, D, F, E, G, F, A, G, and G. And I'm gonna stop there. And then from G, if you want to go back to C, you can, or you can do something else. On the C note, so before the jump of a third, they play a chord in root position. So on the C note, I'm playing a C major chord. Okay, really not that hard. And indeed, to make it easier later to transition to the more complex version, I'm going to play an incomplete C chord. I'm just going to play the notes C and E, and I'm going to double up the note C. Okay? Then my bass goes up a third to the E note, and on that I still play a C chord, but in first inversion. So I'm playing the E at the bass and the G and C note on top of that. And I keep doing that. So whenever I'm going down a second, I'm going to play a root position chord. So on D, I'm playing a D minor because we're in C major and the correct chord is D minor. And when I'm going to up a third to the F, I'm playing a D minor chord in first inversion, so with a bass of F. And then down to E minor, up to the E minor in first inversion, down to F, up to F in first inversion, down to G. That's the simple version. Sounds this way. And I'm finishing it on a C, just to give it an ending. That's a simple version, but then they do something way more interesting, and that's where the fascinating thing happens, okay? So, follow me, because the practical thing is very easy, the theory behind it can become complex, okay? For the complex version, on the first chord, I'm still playing my C chord. On the next, I'm still thinking something like the C chord in first inversion, but I am raising the C note to a C sharp, because I know that in the next chord is D minor, so I have this line C, C sharp, D with the note. Okay, so it sounds this way. I have this C chord, this C in first inversion with a raised root, which is not really that, but follow me here. And then the D minor. Cool. Let's do it again. Okay? We're gonna see later exactly what this is. Then I'm on D minor, and when I go up to the D minor in first inversion, I'm raising that D to a D sharp, so that I get this chromatic line D sharp E with the next chord that is an E minor. So I have the D minor, this mystery chord, and then the E minor. When you do the E minor in first inversion, I keep the E minor in first inversion as it is, because the E note is already close. It's already a half step away from the next note that is F, so I cannot really push it up because it's already there. But then I do the F in root position, and I do the F in first inversion, and then I can push the F to an F sharp to get the chromatic line connecting me to the G note. At the end, it sounds this way. So what are those mystery chords, okay? I mean, it's very easy to classify them as simply first inversion chord with a raised root, but a modern theorist will tell you, no, that's not exactly what it is. And indeed, even a Baroque theorist will tell you that's not exactly how it is. Baroque theorists were calling those chords raised sixths, which is a strange way for us to think about it. But if you think about, for instance, this C chord, the bass is E, and the C note with respect to that bass is the minor sixth. And so they were thinking of this as raising the sixth to a major sixth. Okay, and so they were calling them a raised sixth chord. A modern theorist will call this a C sharp diminished triad in first inversion. Okay, because the notes are C sharp, E, and G, which is other notes of a C sharp diminished triad, or they will call it an incomplete A7th chord. If you think about it, the A7th chord has the notes A, C sharp, E, G. If I take away the A, I'm left with C sharp, E, and G. Those two explanations are perfectly correct. Okay, no problem. It's just a different way of seeing the same notes. Everything will work on this chord with the bass of E. On the chord here with the bass of F, things become a little bit more complex because my notes are D sharp, well, F at the bass, D sharp, and E. This looks a lot like an F7th chord, like because I have the F, the A, and the D sharp, which is equivalent to an E flat, which would be the seventh of an F chord. And these, going to D minor, will be exactly what a modern jazz player would call a tritone substitution, okay? That would be the tritone substitution of a B7th, which is F7th, going down to an E minor chord. So, surprisingly, in Baroque music, we have the same thing as a triton substitution in jazz. This thing is much, much, much older than we thought, okay? And they were using that, only they were calling it an augmented sixth chord, okay? And indeed, augmented sixth chord in classical theory are literally triton substitution chords in jazz theory. Interesting, huh? How those things get back in time much, much, much more than we think. Point is, this new chord progression is a very cool chord progression on its own term, and you can use it whenever you want, however you want. It just sounds great, okay? And again, I'm doing this here in 3 voices, but you can do it in 4 voices. There are many more possible variations of this. That's just the basic one, okay? So have fun with that. Now, when you are studying these things on your guitar, it really pays off if you know where all the notes are on your guitar, so that you don't spend half an hour every time you need to find a new chord voice or a new chord inversion, okay? If you need to play, I don't know, a chord made by the notes E, C sharp, and G, if you know where your notes are, you can find it very fast. I mean, but you need to know your notes so that you know them where they are instantly. You have instant recall of where the notes are. You cannot just count from the open string and go like, okay, that's the G string, G, A, B, etc., because otherwise, again, it takes forever. How do you get instant recall on the notes on your fretboard? Well, I have an free ebook for you that gives you the complete training system. You invest 5 minutes a day, guys, for a few weeks, and you will know all your notes cold. Like, you wake up in the morning, you look at your guitar, you know where the notes are, you don't need to think about it. It's like somebody wrote the notes on top of the fretboard and you are just reading them, completely effortless, okay? And it's completely free. So you find the link on the top right, get this free ebook, download it, learn all your notes, and then doing those things that I'm doing on the guitar will become super easy for you too. And with this, I close communication. Thank you guys. This is Tommaso Zilio of musictheoryforguitar.com, and until next time, enjoy.